joining us live here on set at the NFL Scouting Combine at Indianapolis. NFL Network draft analyst Lance Zierlein joining us. Lance, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. I'm always curious with you guys who break this stuff down where the Combine kind of fits in your evaluation of a draft class. What are you looking for this week in terms of the prospects?
So what you want to see now is the athlete. Well, for me, it depends on, sometimes I want to just go see what guys look like, because seeing on tape is not the same, seeing their body types, their structure, because historically, guys who have the good lean muscle mass, the guys who look the part in the uniform, so to speak. It didn't tell you everything, but typically guys who carry a lot of excess weight that are not good on their frame, I know because that's how I am. So I break down easily. So, you want guys that look the part, and that's one of the things I like to look at. I want to see arm length measurements for certain positions. Of course, I want to see speed, but I also want to see how guys move. You want to see how explosive they are. But for me, like if you give me a position, I'll tell you what I'm looking at.
Quarterback.
Okay, quarterback. What I want to see is I want to go down on the field. I want to be on the field, and I want to feel a confidence. I want to feel something from them. Now, Shedeur Sanders is not going to be throwing, and he's a guy that on tape looks very confident from the pocket. He exudes confidence. And I remember Carson Wentz had that when he was out here. C.J. Stroud had that when he was out here. You can feel those guys. Interestingly enough, a guy who didn't really have that was Bo Nix, but I think Bo Nix went to the perfect spot also.
Yeah. Yep.
But I want to see how guys move. I want to see how corners, what they look like when they're transitioning and moving and flowing. I want to see wide receiver. It's interesting. I sit there on the sideline. Last year, there's T.J. Houshmandzadeh and Michael Irvin, and there's all these wide receivers, and I'm just sitting there listening to them talk about Steve Smith. I'm listening to them talk about how wide receivers are running routes, what they're doing well and what they're not doing well, and I'm just being quiet. I want to hear what Kurt Warner, now he's on the broadcast, but I want to hear what some of these experts, these former players, are saying about these players, so I tighten up my process, or maybe I know a little bit more about what I want to look for when I'm at the Combine. So the field drills are really important to me. The testing is important to solidify a ranking, or to maybe say, ooh, that's like if Will Johnson, let's say he came out here and ran a 4.60. Number one, if he's running a 4.60, he ain't running. So he's not going to run here. Now, I already know he's not running here.
Yeah.
So, but if you have a cornerback where you're not sure on them and they run a 4.62, if you had a second-round grade, you got to drop them to day 3. There's nothing you can do with a 4.62 until they get to their pro day. And if your own stopwatch has him at a 4.55, 4.54, maybe you say, okay, let's push him back up to where he was. But there's certain numbers that are just non-negotiable at certain positions.
Let's talk a little bit about the lines, and I know that is certainly in your blood, in your background, and on the offensive line. For a while, the Browns were very, very good there. And now with retirements, with age, potentially we don't know what's going on with Joel Bitonio, injuries. Jed Wills did not work out for the Browns. It's a position that they're going to need. We saw the Super Bowl right now, the strength of the Eagles team, in addition to great skill, they had dominant lines on both sides of the football. On the O-line, what are you looking for? Who are some guys? I don't think the Browns certainly are doing it at 2. I think they have a much bigger need than that. But, as you get into the second, third rounds, the Browns will have pick 33. They'll have 3 picks in the third round. Are there some guys that can help this team either at tackle or at guard?
Oh, yeah. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Like him a lot. And he's got tackle guard experience. So what you have is a player with pass protection experience inside. But I think he's a really good run blocker. I like Donovan Jackson a lot. I think Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, another guy who to me is maybe more third round, but has the type of mentality where he could be a future starter. The problem is you got one of those guys with Zach Zinter, so you may want somebody who's more athletically inclined than Wyatt Milam. Once again, I'll find out what that looks like coming up soon. I would say Tate Ratledge from Georgia has a 2.3. Charles Grant is going to really do well here at the Combine. He's from William & Mary. He's, once again, another former tackle who figures to bump inside the guard. And anytime you have a tackle in the guard, you're typically a little better in pass protection.
Yep.
Your background's going to be a little better in pass protection. But he's a player that is going to really test well athletically. So if you want to run outside zone stuff, this is your guy, Charles Grant. And he does come from a small school, but that doesn't really bother me. If you can play, you can play. If you're tough, if you can move and you're tough and you're smart, we can work with you.
What does a guy like Donovan get out of the fact that he had to play tackle throughout that run at Ohio State, where he's a guard and then they slide him out to tackle?
Well,
He
number
was
one,
great.
yeah, I mean, what it tells a team is if you're the Cleveland Browns, you say, okay, let's watch him play tackle. All right, could we play with him in a pinch? If it's an emergency, could we swing him out and play him? And you may say, yeah, we can swing. Yeah, in an emergency, we don't want him as a swing tackle, but in an emergency, we can play him there. What you had a chance to do is see this is a guy who stepped up for his team and played very admirably on the way to a national championship. You've got guard tape on him. You know, he got to face off against some really good athletes, so you got to see what his feet look like with deeper sets. You got to see him go against people who he was athletically overmatched maybe against some of the guys that he went up against, although I would argue he's just a pretty good athlete in general. It just speaks to his athleticism. It speaks to his toughness. It speaks to his mentality and competitiveness. Yeah. And it's all a plus for him.
Yeah. As you come in and you look at this draft, and I love in your mock draft, and I know you have one coming. You have one at NFL.com right now, but you have one that's going to be coming out right after the combine.
Yeah.
I love in your opening, you have Cam Ward going to Tennessee, and you say, and you know, it sounds like from people here, and who knows what is real or not, that maybe they won't take a quarterback. But I love that you said, I don't see a quote generational talent in this draft. That is thrown around all the time.
Tennessee did that, I think, intentionally. We will not pass on a guy if he's generational. I think Tennessee would be willing to trade that pick if you really want to know the truth.
That's what it seems
but
like.
I don't think the phrase generational, I mean, God, this is my number one pet peeve. At first it was elite. Everything was elite. Yeah. Elite. And then it's and now it's generational. And I've had to have these arguments online with people. I've had it with my own kids who are teenagers talking about it's a generational. He's the GOAT. GOAT means greatest of all time.
Period.
Like,
the one, singular.
This guy's a GOAT shooter. No, it's like Ray Allen, and we're done. Or Steph Curry now, and we're done.
Sure.
We got an argument now. Larry Bird. But there is no generational player in this draft to me, except maybe the only one I put that kind of grade on was Ashton Genty. And frankly, you can't even say that because I had a higher grade on Saquon Barkley coming out. And they're in the same generation.
Yes.
So you can't really say that. So I don't think there's a generational talent in the draft. I specifically put that in there because that was on the heels of the GM saying we will not pass on a generational player, which immediately got people to, I think he did what he wanted it to do. He wanted to generate a conversation. And I think if the right trade came about, they might be willing to move out of that pick.
I love that you put that in there. It's a pet peeve of mine. I have a buddy of mine who's convinced that a generation is like every 3 years.
I know. I went to the dictionary.
Yeah.
I went to the dictionary on him, and I said, here's generational talents. Tiger Woods.
Yep.
Mike Tyson. Michael Jordan.
Yep.
LeBron James. Tom Brady. I would argue that maybe Pat Mahomes becomes that because you can argue that there's not as much of a crossover. Shohei Ohtani is a generational talent. It's a pretty short list.
It's a short list, exactly. We're talking
it's a pretty short list. Ricky Henderson was a generational type talent years and years ago in baseball.
Yes.
Generational talent is. It's just you're on a real pet peeve.
No, I like it. Listen, we think about it the same way. To that end, one of the things that we've been talking about, obviously in Cleveland, look, the fact of the matter is we need a quarterback. We are picking second. It feels like a consensus that there are the top two quarterbacks. Now, how people rank them compared to other years varies for everybody, and we'll get your take on them in a second. But there is a notion, and I don't know if you run into this in kind of the reactions you get from people to some of your mocks, that if you don't pick a quarterback, it's inherently so much safer than picking a quarterback. There are no sure things in the draft.
No.
Right?
No. You go through the history of the draft, and you'll be humbled in any direction you go. There is no certainties. So, you want to ask me where I'd have Cam Ward, or because I have grades. So you want to ask me where I have Cam Ward or where I have Shedeur Sanders in last year's draft? I have them. I have them directly behind Penix. I have them 6th and 7th. Although technically, I gave them a higher grade than Michael Penix last year because I had some real concerns about Penix's health, and we'll see how that shakes out. But here's the thing. If you find the right quarterback, you're in business. And I'm going to sell you on both these guys.
Please.
Let's make Browns fans happy. I'm going to sell you.
Get your popcorn.
Come on in here. I'm going to sell you on both of them, okay?
Yeah.
When I watched Cam Ward, I saw a guy with Brett Favre type arm talent. The problem you have with Brett Favre is that he's going to hurt his own team, and he is going to help his own team. But he helped him more than he hurt him. He's a Hall of Famer. But with Cam Ward, he tries to play a little too much hero ball, which is pretty standard for most college quarterbacks. But he has an arm. He can make throws that no other quarterbacks in this draft can make. He's better than Anthony Richardson was, who also had a big arm. But Cam Ward has tremendous football character. Everyone talks about his mentality is exactly what you want. He's a worker. He's got a big arm, and he's got the ability, and I would encourage him to more often take advantage of his legs, because a lot of these guys fall into the trap of, well, I want to show you that I'm a passer. Dude, in this day and age, go ask Josh. Go get yards. Go move the sticks. Cam Ward has the ability to move the sticks, and he has the ability to create explosive plays.
Yep.
He will have some turnovers. You got to try to coach it out of him. With a good running game, you take some pressure off of him. That's why building a running game is so important for a young quarterback, and building a good defense. For Shedeur, I've got an interesting. There's a conversation to be had about if you draft Shedeur, you draft Deion Sanders, which is not necessarily a good thing. Are you drafting him? I'm going to go through some concerns I have, and then I'll get to the positives. Are you drafting a guy with a podcast every week? Probably. I don't love that. Just being perfectly honest with you. But let me tell you what I saw with Shedeur. I was expecting to. I wrote Travis Hunter up first. I saw some throws I didn't love, and I went into this thinking, and I try to keep as open a mind as possible.
Yep.
I have to. And I went into this thinking, this guy's going to be a 61 for me, which is like a third-round grade for a quarterback. And I watched the tape, and it didn't take long where I said, man, he's actually really accurate. Like, Shedeur is an accurate quarterback. And what I call everyday throws, from point A to point B. You're going to run a comeback, I'm going to put it right on you. It's on your frame. It's in your hands. It's not up here. Those everyday throws, really good, really accurate. His poise, really good. His confidence, really good. He doesn't get rattled. I think it's a family thing. I think he grew up with a certain level of confidence. Here's what I'm going to say that would be wildly unpopular with the Sanders family, but it's a compliment. I think if Shedeur Sanders stops trying to – now, his arm, extremely average. It's an average arm. Doesn't make great throws off platform. You can show me a highlight here or there, and that's fine. I'm just telling you, in the NFL, it's not going to. He
doesn't have a plus arm. He has an adequate arm.
Does not have a plus arm. He has an adequate arm. But you know what he does really well? I think if you put a good running game behind it with him, and you convinced him that being a game manager is a positive, and you show him all the great quarterbacks of the past that were game managers. Tom Brady's a game manager.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders has the capability of staying in that pocket, picking apart defenses. If he's willing to say, I'm not a playmaker, I am a game, but you can't call it game manager, you call it a captain. I'm the captain of this ship, and I'm going to drive this offense forward. Shedeur has all the intangibles. We always talk about arm talent, and then we say, well, what's really important is accuracy and poise, and the little things like that is really, really important. And you know what? Shedeur has those. He has poise, he has confidence, he has accuracy. So I struggle with him because he's got this wide receiver personality, but he's also got the intangibles that we always look for in a quarterback.
That was the best.
I loved it.
That was so great.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
good.
I know you got to run. Appreciate you so much, Lance, for
Thanks,
stopping
guys.
by with us. We thank you so much. Always a highlight here at the Combine. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.